Dr. Mira Denholm first noticed the letters in late February, sealed inside pale blue envelopes and left on her office chair each morning. They contained no greeting, no signature, only a block of typewritten text that captured her previous night's dream with documentary precision. One letter described the phosphorescent garden where she had wandered among carnivorous orchids. Another recorded the moment she turned a porcelain key in her own belly button and produced music. The wording was clinical, as though authored by a research assistant tasked with transcribing REM events. At first, she suspected one of her students had hacked the Somnolab database where she stored her voice-recorded dream logs, but the timestamps on the envelopes predated the audio uploads. Whoever wrote them knew what she would dream before she herself had dreamed it. Mira specialized in lucid induction methods, transcranial current stimulation, pharmacological cholinergics, sensory cueing. The idea that someone was wiretapping her subconscious left her exhilarated and afraid in equal measure. During staff meetings, she caught herself scanning co-workers' faces, testing for a conspiratorial flicker. When she confronted Ethan, her postdoc, he only laughed. "If I could see your dreams, I'd sell them to Netflix, not print them on dead trees." Yet each morning another envelope appeared, and with it, a certainty grew inside Mira. The letters were a provocation, an invitation to push further than she ever had with her volunteers. One night, the letter described a detail she had never shared with anyone. An antique brass doorknob engraved with a wyvern, the same knob that had turned inside the bedroom of her childhood home. In the dream, she hesitated before touching it, feeling an oily dread. The letter ended with a single italicized line. "Tomorrow you will open the door." The next evening, as she prepared for bed, a thrill of recognition ran through her. She was not merely being observed, she was being guided. She decided to flip the microscope inward. On Monday, she reserved Somnolab's isolation suite, a soundproofed cube with EEG ceiling gantry and integrated TDCS electrodes. University guidelines forbade principal investigators from serving as primary subjects, but Mira filed the session under equipment calibration, locked the door, and patched herself in. Before slipping the black sleep mask over her eyes, she placed the newest envelope on the bedside table. Its contents were empty, save for 3 words: "Choose with care." As the magnesium-boosted melatonin pulled her downward, Mira performed her usual lucid primer, counting breaths, visualizing the fluorescent exit sign above the lab door. The electrical stimulation buzzed across her frontal cortex, and the waking world softened like wax in hot water. When she became aware again, she stood inside a dim corridor of cracked turquoise tiles. Overhead lights swung as if disturbed by distant machinery. At the far end hung that brass wyvern knob, gleaming on an otherwise ordinary white door. Recognition triggered lucidity. "I am dreaming," she thought, and the corridor trembled in acknowledgement. A rustle echoed behind her. Turning, she saw a writing desk that had not existed a moment before. An envelope lay atop it. She ripped it open. "Each decision here is a letter to the waking world. Choose violence, wake violence. Choose mercy, wake mercy." She tried to will the words to rearrange themselves, her usual trick for testing dream malleability, but the text remained fixed. If the letter told the truth, her actions would boomerang back into reality. Carefully, she approached the wyvern door. 2 buttons had materialized beneath the knob, a green circle labeled "Unlock" and a red X labeled "Leave Shut." She lifted her hand, hesitated, then pressed "Unlock." The corridor collapsed in on itself like a folding telescope. She bolted upright on the lab cot, heart jackhammering. Dim emergency lights glowed in the hallway beyond the observation window. Fire alarms wailed. Mira staggered outside and found Ethan stumbling against the wall, a bleeding gash across his temple. "Some maniac smashed the reagent freezer door," he shouted over the siren. "The shards flew everywhere like they were shot out of a cannon." Security footage later showed the stainless steel door springing off its hinges without cause, fragments tracing the exact trajectory of the corridor tiles that had imploded in Mira's dream. The next morning's envelope waited on her office chair. Open one door, many close. It included a Polaroid of Ethan's stitched forehead, taken from an impossible overhead angle. Guilt fermented inside Mira, curdling into fascination. She had conducted hundreds of trials on volunteer sleepers, testing whether dream state problem-solving could enhance waking creativity, but she had never observed bidirectional causality this violent. If doors inside the nightmare altered matter outside it, perhaps she could reverse engineer the phenomenon, undo the harm. She scheduled a second solo session, ignoring the tremor in her signature as she forged the requisition forms. This time she upped the stimulation amperage and ingested a microdose of galantamine. Sleep arrived quicker, heavier. The turquoise corridor greeted her, though spiderweb cracks now veined the walls. A fresh envelope perched on the desk. 2 paths, 1 exit. Beneath the note sat a chess clock. On the left, a steel door with a frost pattern like her laboratory freezer. On the right, a wooden door bearing an ophthalmologic symbol, an eye with radiating lashes. The ticking accelerated insistently. She reasoned that choosing the steel door might refreeze the chaos she had unleashed, so she reached for its latch. Before her fingers touched metal, the wyvern knob from her childhood appeared between both portals, dripping tar. Black viscous strings lashed her wrist, yanking her forward. In panic, she twisted the wooden handle instead. The chess clock slammed to 0. Everything dissolved into a flurry of splinters and shrieking hinges. She woke gasping to total darkness. Emergency generators had failed. Somewhere in the hallway, a security guard was crying out. Flashlight in hand, she discovered him pinned beneath a toppled supply shelf, his leg bent at an inhuman angle. Across the linoleum, the ophthalmology department's mobile vision screener, the exact eye symbol from the dream, lay shattered. She freed the guard, blood slicking her palms, and her mind snagged on the correlation. Steel door equaled freezer accident. Wooden eye door equaled optometry disaster. Every refusal, every gamble rewrote the physics of campus. Administration shut down Somnolab pending safety review. Mira spent the suspension at home cataloging the letters tacked to her bedroom wall, searching for patterns in punctuation, font kerning, paperweight. No clue revealed itself, except that each new envelope arrived earlier, as though the sender grew impatient. One dusk, she drifted in the hypnagogic borderland and heard a familiar voice whispering from the vents. "Right back." She jerked awake and grabbed a pen. On a blank sheet she scrawled, "Who are you? What do you want?" She left the page on her pillow and forced herself to sleep. She dreamed of her own hands retrieving the note, folding it into an envelope, sealing it with wax. A luminous silhouette, her silhouette, carried the letter down the turquoise corridor and slid it under the wyvern door. The implication detonated inside her skull. The author was not an external voyeur, but a future version of herself, bouncing messages across nights like Morse code through wormholes. If she continued, the loop might spiral until identity, chronology, and agency all collapsed. Yet backing away meant abandoning Ethan and the guard to injuries she had triggered. She resolved to break the cycle on her terms. Mira prepared a final experiment. She removed the cot restraints. Mobility, she decided, was essential, and programmed the TDCS unit to peak at gamma-frequency bursts, courting seizure territory. She drafted a single waking world letter addressed to whomever might find her body. "I'm trying to patch the hole. Do not disturb." Then she lay down. The corridor was gone. Instead, she stood in an amphitheater under a lidless sky, every seat occupied by identical copies of herself, each clutching a blue envelope. In the arena's center rose 3 levers, black, white, and gray. Overhead, a scoreboard listed potential consequences: hemorrhage, fire, collapse, next to tally lights that flickered like those of a pinball machine. The Mira crowd chanted, "Pull one, pull all." She marched to the podium, lucid control thrumming through her veins. If dream choices dictated reality, perhaps refusal could halt the algorithm. She sat cross-legged, folded her hands, and stayed still. Seconds stretched into minutes, then hours. The chant softened, replaced by restless muttering. One by one, the seated Miras rose, converging on her. They grew sharp-toothed, paper-cut edges fluttering from their skin. They grabbed her arms, forcing her toward the levers. Plastic seats melted, turning the floor to tar. No choice was still a choice. Gray felt neutral, median. She slammed it down. The arena imploded. She fell and landed on the Somnolab roof beneath a bruised pre-storm sky. Sirens blared across campus. Smoke spiraled from the chemistry hall. She had no recollection of waking, no memory of climbing 7 stories. Her phone buzzed with emergency alerts. A gas line rupture, multiple casualties. Gray for asphyxiation, she thought, horror squirming in her gut. She watched students stream out like ants, coughing into shirts. The last envelope arrived that evening, taped to her apartment door. Inside lay a photograph of her mother's old house, the brass wyvern knob spotlighted by camera flash. On the back, final door. Now or never. She understood. The loop began at its origin point. End it there and maybe reality would reset or unravel entirely. She booked a red-eye flight. The house stood empty, bank-owned for years. She jimmied a basement window and slipped inside. Dust coated the floor like battlefield smoke. As she ascended the staircase, sleep deprivation hallucinations flickered at the edges of vision. She found the door in the attic where her childhood nightmares had sprouted. The wyvern leered, wings spread. A blue envelope rested at its feet. She opened it with trembling fingers. Behind this door is the first dream, the first wound. Choosing to open it made us who we are. Choosing not to may unmake us. Choose. Lucidity bled into daylight. She no longer knew which state contained the other. She placed her palm on the knob. It was warm, pulse quick. With eyes closed, she addressed every iteration of herself. Researcher, dreamer, listener, writer. We have mapped fear, we have mapped guilt, but we have not mapped surrender. Then she removed her hand, stepped back, and sat cross-legged exactly as in the arena. Not a refusal, but a relinquishment. The attic air folded like origami, silent, contained. Somewhere far off, sirens quieted. She sensed, rather than saw, the letters peeling off cork boards, office doors, and hallway floors, fluttering upward in reverse snowfall, drawn toward the attic like filings to a magnet. They slipped beneath the wyvern door, disappearing into whatever lay beyond. When the last page vanished, the door itself cracked, crumbled into ash, and drifted away. Mira awoke on the basement couch, morning sun skewering dusty windows. Her phone blared news updates. Campus gas main undamaged. Fire drill declared false alarm. Ethan's medical records showed no head injury. The world had rewound to the morning before the first envelope. Only her memories, and the faint impression of a knob on her palm, remained. Back at Somnolab, her mailbox was empty, her office pristine. She placed a Do Not Disturb sign on the isolation suite and locked the door. Then she opened her laptop to an untitled document and began typing the corridor, the amphitheater, the levers. She did not know whether recounting the events might reopen the breach, but silence felt like complicity with forces she barely understood. When she finished, she printed the pages, slipped them into a pale blue envelope, and addressed it to Future Researcher. As she sealed the flap, a shiver of déjà vu rippled through her. Was she once again initiating the loop? She carried the envelope to the incinerator bin. Flames licked the paper, curls of smoke staining the vent hood. For a breathless moment, she half expected the brass knob to manifest on the furnace door, demanding yet another choice. Nothing happened. The embers cooled. She rested her forehead against the stainless steel, absorbing its chill. Weeks passed without incident. Sleep came and went unremarked. One spring morning, Mira lingered in bed, savoring the ordinary sunlight, until the mail slot clacked. On the welcome mat lay a single item, a plain envelope the color of newborn sky. No address, no stamp. Her pulse stuttered. She bent, picked it up, and held it to her ear, as though it might contain ticking. Inside was neither threat nor prophecy, only a blank sheet of paper and a short line typed at the very bottom. "We continue by choosing not to choose." She exhaled, the breath catching on a laugh that tasted of relief and terror woven together. Then she folded the letter into a paper airplane, opened the window, and launched it into the wind, watching until it vanished against the enormous, indifferent blue.